Okay, from here, back to you, Faith.
I think Stuart was suckered on that one. Thanks, Lynn. Brian Sussman is here from KDKA-TV. He's here filling in for Mark McEwen. And a big football weekend ahead, huh?
Yeah, we're going to talk about some football game forecasts, a couple of big games around the country. We'll do that in just a moment. In the meantime, this morning's weather segment is sponsored by Nuprin. Discover the medicine in these little yellow pills. Good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and take a look at the latest satellite image first things first. I'll show you that there's a big storm system that has been hanging with us for the past several days around the northern Great Lakes. Attached to that, we also have a very strong cold front, some very heavy thunderstorms going on right now. Northeast Texas, parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, bordering portions of Oklahoma, too. Here's what's going to happen as the afternoon progresses. We'll be seeing some snow in the Great Lakes region, very gusty winds and cool temperatures also coming down from the north today. There's also a cold front, and that cold front will be spreading rain, say, from the northeastern United States all the way in Maine to the deep south. Thunderstorms in the deep south today, too. And also we'll be seeing some very nice weather in the nation's midsection, lots of sunshine. Temperatures, for the most part, will be on the chilly side, but it should be a real nice day out this way. A few clouds scattered around the far western United States, maybe some rain in extreme northern California, but that's just about it. Now, as far as the football forecasts go, let's take a peek. Got a couple games on tap for you here that we've picked out. Ohio State at Michigan. Mostly sunny skies. It will be chilly. Dress for the weather. High temperature only 30 degrees. And then another ball game. Stanford at Washington. I'm anticipating partly cloudy skies with a temperature game time around 50 degrees. That's a quick look at the nation's weather and a football forecast. Now here's your weather.
For Des Moines, Central Iowa, mostly sunny and cool today, our high 45 to 50. Tonight, a chance of sprinkles or flurries, the low in the low 30s. Tomorrow, a 30% chance of showers, with the high again 45 to 50. 27 degrees in Des Moines this morning.
The latest weather for right now. Of course, next half hour, we'll talk about the next day's forecast. Faith?
All right, thanks, Brian. Talk about rivalries, Ohio State and Michigan. It's 24 minutes before the hour. Next, the Buffalo Bills on top of the AFC East.
And the Bills get a tremendous break and over the deflection and goes in for the touchdown.
The Buffalo Bills are one of this year's surprise teams in the National Football League. They are 7-1 and they lead the AFC East. The last time Buffalo did so well was back in the 60s. Under a young quarterback named Jack Kemp, who took the team to AFL championships in 1964, 1965, and, of course, later went on to Congress. These days, the Bills have another star quarterback, Jim Kelly, who has fans in Buffalo talking and dreaming Super Bowl. Jim Kelly joins us live from Buffalo's Rich Stadium, and in Washington, Congressman Jack Kemp. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Do you have a chance to see the Jets game, Congressman?
I sure did. I was just telling Jim prior to the show, Harry, that it was a spectacular game for not only Kelly, but the whole team. It's a real thrill for people in Buffalo.
Is it fun for you to watch these guys?
Oh, I love to watch the Bills. Of course, I have a son playing for Seattle Seahawks and another son playing high school football, but next to my own family, I take great pride in the Buffalo Bills and Jim Kelly. He's a neat guy and a great quarterback.
Jim Kelly went to Buffalo, and everybody said it was on his shoulders to turn the team around. Last year, the Bills were 7-8. You're 7-1 now. What's the key difference?
I think everybody's attitude. I think everybody's changed that attitude. Going to last season, everybody says, well, we're going to try to win. This year, Ralph Wilson's got a few extra players in there, some good players, made some great trades. And I think what Ralph Wilson, Bill Polian said was, in order to make Jim Kelly better, let's get a defense. And that's exactly what they did. We pulled the tough games out at the beginning with our defense. And overall, I think everybody's starting to get used to winning. And you got to get that winning attitude no matter what you do. The attitude is all in your mind. And if you put that together, you can do it. And we're 7-1 now. But everybody's still thinking about that Jets game. And it's 2 games before, but everybody's still thinking about it. And hopefully we can just keep things going and take the second half the way we did the first half.
It's a big turnaround game for you, wasn't it? I mean, or just a sense that you guys maybe really belonged with a record that you've got.
Oh, we definitely do. I think we proved it. We had one bad game against the Chicago Bears, but we've played some very tough teams. We played the Minnesota Vikings. We upset them when a lot of people didn't think we were going to win that one. And we've won every game in our division as far as our conference. And it's just a matter, like I said, just knowing that you can win, because when you come to a team that's been used to losing, back-to-back 2 and 14 seasons, everybody has that attitude. But I think we put it all together, and we got in our minds now that nobody can beat us. And I'll tell you one thing, I don't think there's too many teams that are putting a W beside the Buffalo Bills games before they play us.
Congressman, what's your analysis? Why do you think they're doing so well?
Well, they have tremendous balance. As Jim Kelly pointed out, the defense has given them a tremendously balanced football team, and the ability to get the ball in good position, and then to have a team on offense as good as the Bills have, and particularly with a quarterback who's got that type of attitude, that winning attitude, and that esprit de corps, seems to me to be a winning recipe for the Buffalo Bills. And if you look back in the NFL over the years, you don't win in the NFL without strong defense. It really comes first, as Kelly pointed out. Now that they've got a good defense and they put together a good offense and a great quarterback, I think that's the recipe for contending for the Super Bowl.
Sounds like a recipe for a campaign.
It does, doesn't it?
Jim, what, the Buffalo fans have not been shy over the years to showing their disapproval for when the teams have not played well. What does it feel like up there now?
Oh, it's great. We've had 5 sellouts in a row. We didn't sell out this game against the Green Bay Packers yet, but there's only a few thousand tickets left. Now I feel before Sunday's game it will be a sellout because everybody realizes now that it's not going to be on TV. They're going to have to come out here and watch us. And anytime you average 78,000, that's great support, and we've had great support here. We've had our ups and downs as far as a team, but we're 7-1 now, and I think everybody's proud of us, and I think we're proud of ourselves. But one thing we can't forget how we got to this point by working hard, and we just have to keep going the way we are. And great coaching, and it's just a matter of putting it all together and continue that second half, because teams that win championships are teams that come on in the second half of the season.
Congressman, you miss it?
I miss the money.
Oh, come on. You miss those big hits from the defensive ends?
Yeah, if I had Jim Kelly's money, I could throw mine away.
Yeah.
I take pride in my children playing football. I take pride in the Buffalo Bills, and I don't miss it. I had 13 years of it, and I'm thrilled to watch the NFL today, just growing by leaps and bounds.
Jim Kelly, Jack Kemp, thank you both,
Thank
gentlemen,
you.
for
Thank you.
joining
Jack,
us this
take
morning.
care of yourself.
See you, Jim. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you.
It is 17 minutes before the hour. Faith?
Harry next Dallas, picking up right where they left off.
I told you she was a liar.
And he's a murderer.
The only murderer in that apartment was you, darling.
I wish it had been.
Tonight, the folks at South Fork begin another year of greed, treachery, and deceit as Dallas opens its 11th season on CBS. Naturally, last season ended with a cliffhanger. Mr. Nice Guy, J.R. Ewing himself, was shot yet again. But this time, we know exactly who did it. Sue Ellen Ewing closed out last season by pumping a few rounds of lead into her husband, J.R., after he'd thrown her new lover out a window.
So what's a woman to do? I mean, you pick up a gun and you shoot him. I think I did the only obvious thing. Sue Ellen hasn't shot a gun before, so I don't think she's very good at it. I didn't know how to shoot a gun. When Leonard Katzman, our producer, came up to me on the set, he said, well, you're going to do this and hold the gun. I didn't know how to hold a gun. So Larry and the producer told me, okay, do that. I looked very convincing. I impressed myself. I don't believe this. You mean that bastard is still alive?
With tonight's opener, J.R. is back.
What's not to understand?
Well, Mr. Ewing, you're the luckiest man I've ever known, or your wife is the worst shot.
But things are going to be different for him this year. Oh, he'll still be evil, but he'll pay a price for it.
I think this year is going to blow it open. I really do. We're having a great time. There's a lot of things that I'm doing that I haven't done before, and I'm not winning all the time. Of course, I will in the end.
Every man's got his price.
Yeah. Seems that way, yeah.
Yeah. Except this man.
In the meantime, J.R. will spend time in the slammer doing hard labor. Once again, he falls in love with the wrong woman at the wrong time.
I really like her a lot, and she falls in love with me. Well, one thing leads to another, of course, as it usually does on Dallas. The boys find me in bed with her. And she's very young. She's of the age of consent, but very, very young. And gorgeous. Kathy Podwell's going to be a big star.
He's just some intriguing man to her, because he just kind of goes after her. He knows that he wants her. He knows he's going to get her, and she sees that. So she's like really, it's thrilling. It's exciting for her. So she doesn't really know the real JR. She just sees this real exciting man.
Another new love interest hits Dallas this season. This one is Bobby's.
Action, please.
But his problem may not be his new love, but his wife Pam, who he thought was blown up in a car crash a few seasons back. In another case of what will they think of next, Pam, formerly played by Victoria Principal, shows up one more time.
This girl did come in and do a very pivotal scene on the show. But we won't know, even after it airs, until they want to make a decision about it, whether or not it is or isn't Pam. So I'm safe in saying that. I'm not going to be struck down by saying that. It's not a lie.
Charlene Tilton is definitely back full-time. As Lucy, she's ready to have it out with old Uncle J.R.
My being here makes you unhappy, J.R.? That's all I want.
We can square off. And I win a round or two with him, which is good.
Yeah.
I think it's going to make the world happy if J.R. finally gets his comeuppance.
Sue Ellen is no longer taking any of his stuff. So she's no longer a victim. She's wealthy in her own right. She's terrific. I love Sue Ellen. He doesn't, but I do. I love her. I love the character, and I love the way she's grown and progressed and become her own woman.
Newcomer George Kennedy joins the Dallas cast this year as Carter McKay, who buys Ray Krebs' ranch next to South Fork.
J.R., of course, is the personification of evil. And all of those people who have been waiting for J.R. to get his, this is your year, folks.
I told you she was a liar.
And he's a murderer.
The only murderer in that apartment was you, darling.
I wish it had been. Then I would have had my son, and you would have just been a bad memory.
So it looks like once again the world is out for J.R. But when all is said and done...
Well, who always wins?
It's 10 before the hour. Next, the controversy over an Ohio doctor. And still ahead this morning, we'll be at home with Anthony Perkins, just trying to be helpful in Catch 22.
Well, if you could speak to Major Duluth.
This quadrant commander.
Yes, and tell him I don't want to fly anymore.
Well,
He's going to raise some missions again. He's trying to kill us all, and I can't do it because I'm desperate.
But it's not my business.
I'm desperate!
I'll see what I can do.
This morning's health segment is sponsored by Arthritis Pain Formula in maximum strength for hours of relief from minor arthritis pain.
Tomorrow night, the CBS News broadcast West 57th will show the shocking story of a doctor in Dayton, Ohio, who performs experimental surgery on women's sexual organs without their consent or knowledge. Correspondent Karen Burns covered the story, and she joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Harry. We did this story because what happened to these women could happen to anyone.
This man reminds me of someone that did experimentation in Auschwitz that was unchecked, and no one could stop them.
Dr. James C. Burt is a 67-year-old gynecologist and obstetrician in Dayton, Ohio. 22 years ago, he began to surgically alter the anatomy of women. He does this, he says, to make women better sex partners, and he's called it the love surgery. But some women call him a butcher.
I don't expect my current gynecologic peers to accept my work, and I am very willing to stand the test of time.
I hate to use the term Frankenstein, but it's almost like we're creating a new anatomy here, and in order to do that, some are falling by the wayside.
Dr. Bradley Busalco has seen Dr. Burt's idea of a new anatomy because he has examined 6 women Burt operated on.
When you first saw Dr. Burt's patients, had you ever seen any kind of surgery done like that?
I can honestly say I have not.
Is there any medical benefit to be obtained from it?
I feel that there's none.
Who is he to say that he can improve upon what God made? I did not ask this man to improve.
Sandy Shockey didn't ask Dr. Burt to do anything other than deliver her first child. But years ago, while she was still under anesthesia, Dr. Burt performed his love surgery on her without her knowledge or her consent.
The pain is extreme. I'm not talking about a little bit of discomfort. I mean sharp, piercing, knife-like pain that feels like something is tearing inside you. That what little joy you do feel during sex, it just doesn't seem to be worth it.
If you were an unscrupulous physician, you could take advantage of the majority of patients who walk into your office. I don't think that would be difficult.
Well, how do we trust if that's the case?
I think it's all we've got right now.
What makes the story truly shocking is that it's not just about one doctor. It's about a system that many people believe has allowed a doctor to harm people, to shatter lives, yet still keep practicing medicine.
If the hospital knows about this in Dayton, Ohio, why doesn't the hospital kick him out or stop him or something?
Well, the hospital not only knows, but they've allowed him to do this for almost 22 years, Harry. But the problem is that doctors tend to sue other doctors, and therefore this hospital has tried. Some people within the hospital have tried very hard to get rid of this doctor. People within have called him a quack, a charlatan, any number of names. But once they go to the lawyers at the hospital, they say, I'm sorry, we can't get rid of him. Our hands are legally tied. It's the law. We can't fire him.
Can't do anything about it.
That's what they say.
We'll look forward to it on West 57th tomorrow night. Karen Burns, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Good to see you.
4 minutes before the hour, we'll be back.
On CBS This Morning, here's a look at your weather. A cold front knifing its way across the Appalachians will trigger off showers and thunderstorms, which will extend from New England into the Deep South.
Mostly sunny and cool today, our high 45 to 50. Tonight, a chance of sprinkles or flurries, the low in the low 30s. Tomorrow, a 30% chance of showers, with the high again 45 to 50. 27 degrees in Des Moines this morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. Just one moment, please.
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth.
The voice of Orson Welles terrifying radio listeners 50 years ago. Welcome back to CBS This Morning. I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Faith Daniels. Kathleen Sullivan is off this morning.
The War of the Worlds was a radio drama performed by Orson Welles' Mercury Theater. Just a radio drama, but it scared the daylight out of America. We will look back at fictitious but frightening invasion from Mars, talk to Howard Koch and the man who wrote it. Howard Koch is the man who wrote it. We'll sample a 50th anniversary production of the drama starring Jason Robart, Steve Allen, and Douglas Edwards. And we'll visit Grover's Mill, New Jersey, the real town where the Martian invaders were supposed to have landed.
I guess equally appropriate for a Halloween weekend, we will be at home with Anthony Perkins this morning, who played Norman Bates in Hitchcock's masterpiece of fright, Psycho. First, though, the news. Here again is Charlie Osgood. Charlie?
Thank you, Faith. Leading our news, Ronald Reagan back on home turf and hunting votes for George Bush. Mr. Reagan will deliver a foreign policy address today in Los Angeles. And as Ron Allen reports, he still knows how to play the crowds.
President Reagan remains enormously popular in the state he served 2 terms as governor and still calls home. He has made delivering California for George Bush a top priority.
You've already given me so much, I hesitate to ask you anything else. But will you do just one more favor for me? Will you go out and win one for the Gipper?
The race remains extremely close in California. Bush has pulled ahead of Dukakis only very recently. Last night at the San Diego Sports Arena, the president took several sporting shots at the Democratic opposition.
Now that the game seems to have turned against them, the liberals have started squealing that he's running a negative campaign. Well, I hope the people of Oakland will forgive me, but that would be a little like the A's complaining that the Dodgers ran a negative World Series.
This is just the beginning of a week-long campaign swing through several states where the Bush campaign has decided the race is too close for comfort. Yesterday, the president stopped in Little Rock, Arkansas, then Springfield, Missouri. But California has more electoral votes than both of those states and a few more combined. Mr. Reagan's home turf is the priority of this campaign trip. Later on Tuesday, the president will make his way north to his ranch near Santa Barbara for a weekend of rest. Then several more stops are planned in California as the president tries to use his popularity to push George Bush over the top. Ron Allen, CBS News, with the president in San Diego.
Michael Dukakis has challenged President Reagan's claim that if Harry Truman were alive, he'd be supporting George Bush. At a town meeting in Truman's hometown of Independence, Missouri, Dukakis compared himself with the late president, describing Truman as a liberal who balanced budgets. Earlier last night, Dukakis was interviewed by Dan Rather on the CBS Evening News. Dukakis blasted what he called Bush's negative advertising campaign.
Probably had more corruption and malfeasance than any administration in recent memory, if not in history, that the so-called war against drugs that this administration has been conducting under Mr. Bush's leadership has failed and failed pathetically. We've got 3 times as much cocaine coming into this country as we did when he started. So there's no mystery about why they put those ads on, and they have done damage.
Today, Dukakis campaigns in Missouri and Michigan. George Bush makes stops in California, Nebraska, and Illinois. The Soviet people are being told now for the first time that they have an official budget deficit. It's $58 billion, and that is bad news for consumers who already have to line up for the necessities of life. The Kremlin is now tapping international lenders such as Japan for about $9 billion in credit. A lot of American money may be going to replace a new U.S. embassy in Moscow that's almost complete and completely unusable. U.S. officials say the building is riddled with Soviet listening devices, and President Reagan has now decided it should be torn down. The estimated replacement cost about $300 million. The Federal Aviation Administration is moving to require airlines to replace the rivets on older Boeing 737s. The proposal would affect about 100 planes now in service, and experts say it would cost more than $80,000 per plane. The problem rivets are believed to allow skin cracking and could allow the fuselage to rip away, as happened to an Aloha Airlines 737. Rescue workers in Barrow, Alaska will be out again when daylight comes. They're hoping to find that the 2 trapped whales have gone onto open water. So far, we don't know whether that has happened or not. And David Dow tells us what went wrong.
Just as they were about to celebrate victory, rescue crews were back on the ice yesterday, still seeking a way out for 2 trapped California gray whales. The escape channel, carved by a Soviet icebreaker, froze quickly in temperatures of 18 below. Instead of swimming free, the whales were trapped again, bruised and bleeding in icy debris.
Everything just kind of fell to pieces last night. It didn't look very promising.
But the native crews were not about to give up. They began carving a new lifeline for the whales. The whales eagerly followed, apparently drawn by the noise of chainsaws. By late afternoon, the new string of breathing holes extended to within 1,000 feet of open water, to freedom. But even colder weather was coming in. How long could the water, the open lead, stay open?
To me, it was more appropriate to make a break than take a chance that the weather would really get bad tomorrow, and the lead that we saw tonight would be less available to the animals.
So the Americans asked the Russians for one last favor, to forge just one more channel for the whales. As darkness fell, a small work crew set up a marker light a few feet from the whale's final breathing hole. The ship was to crush another path, then retreat. Scientists hoped the whales would follow and be free, and act free, despite 3 weeks of human pampering.
They're wild animals, and very soon after they hit the open water, they're going to act like gray whales anywhere else.
This morning, scientists will visit the site where the whales were last seen, hoping to find just another empty hole. David Dow, CBS News, Point Barrow, Alaska.
And for now, that's it from the newsroom. Back to Harry and Faith.
Thanks very much, Charlie. Mark McEwen has been off, of course, all week, and with us doing the weather all week has been Brian Sussman of KDKA in Pittsburgh. Brian.
Thank you, Harry. Mark, I sure hope you're not vacationing in the upper Mississippi Valley or around the Great Lakes, because, boy, this afternoon, the snow will continue to fall in this part of the country. They're seeing some very gusty winds, too. The snow, as the day continues, will probably be falling also along some of the eastern sections of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Then, as this frontal system continues to move out to sea, we'll be seeing rain in the northeastern United States. The heaviest rain will be north of New York. There will be rain in the city as the day continues. The rain will extend into the deep south, Some heavy thunderstorms anticipated down that way. Indeed, there are some heavy ones even as we speak, say in parts of Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and northern sections of Louisiana. Some clouds scattered around the western United States. Maybe some rain in northern California, but that's just about it. Now, as far as cold temperatures go, take a look at what it's going to do tonight. In the northern United States, I think we call radiational cooling. Clear skies, a little snow on the ground. It is going to be chilly. Temperatures 0 to 10 degrees in parts of North Dakota, northern Minnesota. The teens will extend as far south as northern Nebraska. So as you can see, yes, it's not just looking fall-like, but almost winter-like in the northern United States. That's a quick peek at the nation's weather. Now here's a look at your weather.
For Des Moines, central Iowa, mostly sunny and cool today, our high 45 to 50. Tonight, a chance of sprinkles or flurries, the low in the low 30s. Tomorrow, a 30% chance of showers, with the high again 45 to 50. 27 degrees in Des Moines this morning.
Latest weather for now. Harry will be back with more next half hour.
Thanks, Brian. 8 minutes past the hour. Next, the War of the Worlds, the return of a radio classic.
The observers report the machines are moving at high rates of speed, but seem to be picking their way carefully, making a conscious effort to avoid disruption and destruction of cities or countryside.
Years ago this Sunday night, Martians invaded Earth. It wasn't real, only a drama on CBS radio. But to many of the 6 million people listening, it sounded very real and frightening. They heard a ballroom music program interrupted by a news bulletin of a Martian landing in New Jersey. Many didn't hear the disclaimers that it was just some Halloween fun.
It was the night before Halloween, 1938, 8 p.m. 23-year-old Orson Welles and his Mercury Theater presented a radio play based on H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds. John Houseman was the co-producer.
Within 10 minutes, I realized that the switchboards were deluged with complaints, calls, and that hell had broken loose.
Historians believe more than 1 million people took the broadcast literally.
We thought the world was coming to an end because of the Martians.
People were running and screaming and knocking on doors.
They were all excited, and one was saying to another, "Is this the end of the world?"
At a news conference the next day, Orson Welles defended the hoax.
I'm extremely surprised to learn that a story which has become familiar to children should have had such an immediate and profound effect upon radio listeners.
Suddenly, you realize that the spoken word through radio was able to affect the feeling, the emotions of the entire world.
The man who wrote the radio play, The War of the Worlds, was Howard Koch, a young writer who would go on to, from radio to Hollywood, where his credits would include co-authorship of the film classic Casablanca. Howard Koch is with us this morning. Good morning. I see you are holding there in front of you an original script of the historic radio broadcast. It's been on display at Sotheby's here in New York. They're going to be auctioning it in December. It is fragile. It has some notes scribbled on it. Those are your notes. There are some Orson Welles handwriting in the inside as well. I thought they confiscated all of those.
All but this. This was in my apartment. I didn't go down to the studio during the broadcast. And they came in, the police came in and took all the scripts they could get their hands on in the studio. But of course they didn't know that I had this one up on 72nd Street. And it's become now, I guess, the only one that I know of.
Amazing. They came to you and they said, H.G. Wells has this incredible story. Write it into a radio play. How many, you had what, 6 days?
Yes, and the way Orson wanted it, I could use very little from the H.G. Wells story except the idea of the invasion and description of the Martian machines and their heat wave.
Right.
But the rest of it, he wanted in news bulletin form and then first-person singular and contemporary. And I said, but Orson, this is impossible to do in 6 days. That's original script. And Orson never brooked that kind of of defiance. And he said, do it, that's all. So I went back and started on it, and I realized I needed a map because I had to lay out a campaign between us and the Martians the way Orson wanted.
Sure.
And I had been up to the country, see my father, Kingston, New York, and coming down, I went through a portion of New Jersey. And so I stopped at a gas station, and they gave me New Jersey map. So when I came back to my apartment, I spread out the map on the table, closed my eyes, put the pencil down.
And that's where the Martians landed.
That was Grover's Mill. Yeah.
Now, you worked tirelessly on the script for 6 days.
Yes.
Is it true you had no idea when you woke up the next day that after the radio broadcast that all this furor had been created by what you had written?
Not in the least. They had tried to reach me during the night, but I was so tired I didn't wake up. And the way I found out was I was going down. I had 1/2 morning off before the next assignment, and that was a chance to get a haircut. So I walked down 72nd Street, and I heard passers-by saying words like war, invasion, so on. And I rushed into the barber shop, and I said, what's going on? Hitler made a move? We're in war or something? And he laughed and held up the morning paper.
And there it was.
And there it was, Martian invasions, play, Panic's Nation, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
Well, very odd moment in my life.
Howard, thanks very much for coming and joining us this morning.
Oh,
do appreciate it. To remember that 1938 War of the Worlds and 1988 War will be broadcast, and Faith has that story.
Harry, for the 50th anniversary, an independent company, Other World Media, came up with the idea to redo War of the Worlds, and they have done just that with Jason Robards during the Orson Welles role and Steve Allen, and even longtime CBS anchorman Doug Edwards in the cast. It'll be broadcast on public radio this Sunday.
Those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars.
Should we bomb them back to the Stone Age?
Pearson, could you just... It is all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own.
This is the end now.
The latest report, 120 known survivors. This will upset the country again.
A nationwide panic is not what this production is after. The new version of the War of the Worlds simply hopes to revive radio drama.
Radio is still a very important thing. You have to let the words carry it. The right words are the most important thing.
Dr. Pearson, what was their weapon like?
A heat ray. My guess that in some way they're able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of absolute non-conductivity.
But if this looks like a movie set, it's because it's being recorded at George Lucas's Skywalker Ranch in an attempt at the ultimate radio realism.
Please.
We're moving this medium into the 20th century. We are taking it on the road. We are recording on location. I mean, that's something that I don't think anyone has really ever done before with it. We're treating it like a cinematic event, cinema for the mind.
So the latest of high-tech recording systems is being used.
This thing is so cutting edge that even I don't know how it works.
Randy Tom, the sound designer of many films, including The Empire Strikes Back and The Right Stuff, is in charge of the recording, and David Osman is the director.
We don't have to record wind and fill it in later on. This machine appears, you don't see it, but it's always there. It's there down here, right? So what we're doing is just recording exactly the way television or film is recorded. It makes our production easier, and it makes it real.
In the interest of making it all sound real, David Osman hooked up CBS News veteran Douglas Edwards in Tallahassee, Florida, with Steve Allen in New York via satellite.
Very bad news, Doug.
Steve Allen remembers listening to the broadcast in Chicago when he was just 17.
when we heard that they were sighted in the skies over our city, we thought we should get out. That was a pretty irrational response. Get out where? You know, if we could get out to Cleveland, it might have made some sense, but just to get out in the street made no sense. Nevertheless, that's where we were immediately headed.
Are people going to head that way this Sunday night? This crowd of unsuspecting picnickers was recruited to play the voices of frightened citizens. And they certainly let their imaginations run wild.
The monsters in your mind are far more terrifying than the ones that anyone can visualize for you.
So even today, it seems that a suspension of disbelief is possible. And perhaps that's still what radio can do best. Tomorrow in the small town of Grover's Mill, a commemorative monument will be unveiled by Howard Koch and by New Jersey Governor Thomas Kean. We have the very first sneak preview of the monument this morning. Joining us live from Grover's Mills is Douglas Forrester, chairman of the commemorative committee. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning.
I guess that's the monument we're seeing right there.
It certainly is.
What does it say?
We have a bronze monument which was sculpted by Jay Warren, which is a fine example of what we're trying to portray here. We have the three main elements of the celebration. We have the spaceship, we have Orson Welles at the mic, and we have an American family listening to the radio. You know, one of the important things here that we're trying to point out is that this is not just a little local event. Grover's Mill is part of West Windsor, but it really has become part of the national consciousness because of the significance of what happened that night. It really was a national event.
But the people in Grover's Mill were somehow seen to have panicked more than the rest of the country. You don't see it that way, do you?
Well, there were very few people here in Grover's Mill back in 1938. Most of the reports of the panic were reports from the West Coast, Manhattan, and northern New Jersey. There are certainly amusing anecdotes that come from this part of the country as well, but this town responded the same way everybody else did, which is one of the main reasons that we wanted to commemorate the golden anniversary. We're having a good time. We're commemorating the only place the Martians have landed. That's worth a good party.
You're also going to put a time capsule in, I understand, that will be dug up again on the 100th anniversary. What's going to be in it?
Yes, we are. You can see the time capsule to my left. The time capsule will contain mementos from those in our Grover's Mill circle who have helped us with the celebration, as well as some school children and some public remembrances. That'll be unearthed on the 100th anniversary. In order that we can continue to remember what is a very unique piece of Americana.
Douglas Forrester, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend out there. Howard Koch,
thank you very much.
As well. It's 22 past the hour. Coming up Friday at Home with Anthony Perkins.
Welcome back to CBS This Morning. I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Faith Daniels in for Kathleen Sullivan. Anthony Perkins has played everything from light comedy to heavy drama, more than 300 roles in all. But his most memorable characterization is Norman Bates of Psycho. Yesterday, Tony Perkins talked with Kathleen from his Hollywood home, and we'll be hearing that conversation this half hour.
It didn't take long for Tony Perkins to be recognized as a real talent. He won a Tony for his second Broadway play and an Oscar nomination for his second movie. So we're going to see more with Tony Perkins in just a bit. Now the news. Here's Lynn Brown. Lynn?
Good morning, Harry. Leading our news this half hour, a ruling by the French government that a controversial abortion pill must be put back on the market. And the company making the pill says it will go along with the order. The company had withdrawn the pill after coming under heavy pressure from anti-abortion groups, but the withdrawal brought a flood of protest from public health officials. The French government says it acted today because it feels it's a threat to public health not to sell the pills. 11 days to go in Campaign 88, and Michael Dukakis is playing catch-up. Dukakis appeared at a town meeting last night in Independence, Missouri, Harry Truman's hometown. And Dukakis scoffed at President Reagan's claim that if Truman were alive, he'd be supporting George Bush. Dukakis even used what Bush calls the L word, saying that he, like Truman, is, quote, a liberal who balanced budgets. For his part, George Bush is enjoying a solid lead in the polls, and he says his negative campaigning against Dukakis is over. Bush spent last night trading one-liners with Bob Hope at Hope's home near Los Angeles. The celebrities there ranged from Jane Russell and Gene Autry to relative newcomers like Tom Selleck. Bush referred to his host by saying that with the campaign winding down, he's happy there's hope. In San Francisco this morning, doctors are counting on a nationwide search to find the donor organs they need for a series of life-saving liver transplants. 5 people were stricken after they ate poisonous death-cap mushrooms at a dinner party in Portland, Oregon last weekend. Doctors say Andy Clark is in dire need of an immediate transplant. He was rushed to San Francisco by Learjet along with Glenda Sobolik. She's already had a liver transplant, and she's now in critical condition. Doctors say the poison directly attacks the liver, brain, and kidney.
All of the patients who have developed problems with liver injury, problems with blood clotting, and changes in their mental status have died.
The death cap is considered to be the most deadly of all mushrooms. Well, it is still hours until dawn in Barrow, Alaska, and there is no word on the fate of the California gray whales. Rescue workers had gotten them to within reach of a channel opened by a Soviet icebreaker, but the whales refused to make the final dive to freedom. The Soviets then agreed to a final gamble, a nighttime push towards the very edge of the whale's breathing hole. Rescue workers hope that first light will show the whales have moved to open water. And you may recall that we told you earlier this week about a piece of luggage that dropped from the sky into an Indiana cornfield. Well, word this morning is it had fallen 22,000 feet after going through a broken window on a small plane. The owner and the suitcase now have been reunited, and damage to the suitcase was relatively minor. So we expect the next time we see it will be in a luggage commercial. That's it from here. We go back to Harry and Faith. Have a good weekend.
You know it'll happen.
Thanks, Lynn.
Mark McEwen's off all week. Here again is Brian Sussman of KDKA-TV in Pittsburgh. Brian, how about the weekend weather?
Oh, yeah, lots of people are going to be making plans for the coming weekend, so if you have any outdoor stuff in the works, stay tuned. I'll have the outdoor forecast for Saturday upcoming. In the meantime, though, let's talk about what's happening right now. We have some wintry weather indeed in the Great Lakes region. Several inches of snow on the ground in parts of Michigan. Very gusty winds rolling through this area, too. There's a frontal system that's causing all the bad weather ahead of the front. There's going to be rain today. The heaviest rain will primarily be north of New York City. Then there'll be some thunderstorms going on in the south. Some of those thunderstorms could be kind of heavy at times. Lots of clouds in the far western United States. We'll be seeing a little bit of rain moving into northern California. Now, here's what's going to happen tomorrow. There will be a great deal of sunshine in the nation's midsection tomorrow, although the temperatures in this region will be kind of on the crisp side. Very, very fall-like for sure. As far as the rain goes, it'll be confined to basically the southeastern United States, and we'll be seeing a few possible thunderstorms in the far western United States, and those will be mostly mountain-induced thunderstorms. That's a quick look at the nation's weather for today and tomorrow. Now here's a look at your weather.
Forecast for Des Moines and central Iowa, mostly sunny and cool today, a high 45 to 50. Tonight, a chance of sprinkles or snow flurries, a low in the low 30s. Tomorrow, a 30% chance of rain, a high near 50. Currently in Des Moines, we have clear skies and 26 degrees.
That's it for my stint in New York. Harry, Faith, it's been a lot of fun. Crew, you've been great. And blue skies, America. We'll see you again.
Come back and visit sometime, Brian.
It's 25 before the hour. Before she left for a long weekend, Kathleen spent some time yesterday talking with Anthony Perkins. Next, her conversation at home with the star of Psycho, the perfect film for Halloween and maybe even Mother's Day.
Do you go out with friends?
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
With segment of CBS This Morning is sponsored by Sominex. Sominex helps you fall asleep gently. Sleep safe, sweet dreams, good night.
Halloween is just a few days away. And to get in the mood, this Friday we visited home with an actor who starred in one of the scariest movies ever made. His career has spanned more than 3 decades and includes nearly 100 screen and stage roles, but he will probably be best remembered as the part-time taxidermist and full-time madman in the Hitchcock classic Psycho. We spend this morning at home in Hollywood with Anthony Perkins. Honors came early. In 1956, in his only second movie, Friendly Persuasion, he got an Oscar nomination. A year later, in his second role on Broadway, he won a Tony Award. And 20 years later, he was still drawing rave reviews from theater critics for the drama Equus. Among his 41 movie roles, Perkins has played a doomed Australian Navy lieutenant in a world devastated by nuclear war, the enthusiastic but ineffective chaplain Tapman in Catch-22,
Sergeant Towser speaking.
and the victim's secretary in the murderous world of Agatha Christie.
Until a couple of weeks ago. Well,
But rarely do actor, role, and film merge as memorably as they did in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. To millions of us, Anthony Perkins is still Norman Bates and still scary.
And over there.
The bathroom.
Yeah.
Home for Anthony Perkins and his family is secluded. It includes a display of family photos and a long hallway that runs almost the entire length of the house. And that's where he's invited us this morning. Good morning, Tony. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
What is that scary jack-o'-lantern looking thing about to your right in the front of the hallway? You don't wear that around the house, do you?
No, not really. You know, I was listening to your introduction and hearing you refer to Norman Bates as full-time madman, but I think that one of the charms of that character and one of the reasons that it's endured through a couple of sequels is actually he's such a schizophrenic personality and has his nice side, his agreeable side, and his friendly side as well.
Do you have to go over and over again in your head who is Norman Bates and why did he command such attention from the public?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons, actually, that he's not really a villain. He's someone who really tries hard to rise above his circumstances and live a productive and a socially acceptable life. It's his other side. It's his dark side, and I think a lot of people can connect with that and feel that perhaps they have a little of Norman Bates in them too.
Well, the house you're in right now surely doesn't look like the Bates Motel.
It doesn't, I agree.
It's lovely. I'm so surprised. Are you somewhat of a displaced New Yorker? So surprised to see you in a Spanish, kind of a Mexican house in Southern California.
I don't feel like a displaced New Yorker, really. Having moved around so much in my career and in my life, I'm pretty set wherever I am. I've done a lot of location work. You know, these days, especially actors have to be used to getting up and packing a suitcase and going to, for instance, I just spent 8 weeks in Hungary, in Budapest. Now, to some people that might turn out to be a difficult experience or a place they would be chafing to get out of, but I just found a way of settling in and giving myself a day-to-day life, a working life in Budapest, and it is a depressed economy, and the people there are sometimes a little bit more serious than we think of ordinary people as being, but I just managed to make it part of my life. It didn't bother me. So I don't really feel displaced from New York. I think if we moved back to New York, I wouldn't feel displaced from here either.
Can you show me a little bit of your home?
Sure.
This is the long hallway, and it goes into kind of a continuous space where I think someone is waiting for us, in fact.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
It's nice and open, airy feeling, isn't it? Is that why you bought the house?
Yes, it is. It's one of the reasons we did. And one of the things we definitely want, here's a beautiful shot of my wife, actually, who's waiting for us right here. We wanted a big living room that would be the most useful room in the house and not just be a room that was set apart for entertaining and doing things that were more formal than living might be.
Barry Berenson Perkins. Thank you for joining us, Barry.
Hi, how
are you?
Good.
You are so well known as a photographer, but it has always surprised me, considering that your grandmother was such a well-known fashion designer, Elsa Schiaparelli, that you decided to go into photography and not model.
I was actually pretty unattractive as a teenager. It just never occurred to me to model. It was not... What?
When did you decide to become a photographer?
I guess when I was about 19 or 20. After I had left school, I basically had to find something to do because we went to English boarding schools and they didn't teach you much of anything except sewing and cooking. So we didn't know much how to do anything, and I didn't go to college. So my sister and I basically had to go out and find something to do, and Mariza chose the modeling, and I chose the photography.
Still, it's a little hard to imagine her as an unglamorous and unattractive teenager, isn't it?
Well, the two of you were somewhat one of the most celebrated couples, I guess, in the 70s. You were much younger than your husband, weren't you, at the time, Barry?
I still am.
I was
But, Tony, you were kind of well-known to be ensconced in bachelorhood.
Exactly. But surprising things can happen to anyone in life.
Well, so what was it? You have had about, 15 years now to look back and figure out what it was that put you two together?
Exactly, and I still really haven't figured it out. It's funny, Barry took a picture of me when we first met. She was on an assignment for Interview magazine, and she came down to my house in Chelsea and took a few pictures. And in one of the pictures, which she might show you, I've got this quizzical look, this mysterious kind of a half smile and half serious. It's like, what is happening to me? Who is this girl that's just run into my life? How did all this happen? I can see that expression on my face quite clearly. I don't know whether the camera picks it up. It's definitely one of mystery.
Barry, is it true that your children already are 14 and 12 years old? Not really children.
Can you believe that? Well, we can't believe it. We look at them and we think, I don't know how this happened so quickly. It's just not possible.
And even when you look at pictures taken of them every year, you say, well, look, here they were 2, here they were 3, here they were 4, but where is the process? Where is the growing up process best illustrated? It isn't illustrated. It's invisible. It happens in spite of the fact that you may wish it to slow down.
Well, we're going to continue our visit with you in just a moment. We're going to go away for a commercial with you, Anthony Perkins, your wife, Barry Berenson. And we will return to California in just a moment. And we return now to our pre-Halloween visit with the actor who, for many years, made people afraid to go into the shower, the star of Hitchcock's masterpiece of fright, Psycho, Anthony Perkins. Anthony, you have that grimace look. Boy, I'll never be able to get rid of Norman Bates.
But you know it's okay. It's only not okay, or it only wouldn't be all right if I had a resistance to that identification. But so long as it doesn't rub off on me, on my own real personality, it doesn't matter.
You know, as I watched you this morning, you seem more at ease in this house than most people do in their homes. You kind of couch yourself against the wall and you kind of curl up inside of it, don't you?
One reason...
Take me into the dining room if you can.
One reason is that people have such a pre-worked out idea of me that I do resemble some of my roles. And I know I go to some pains, some length to try to illustrate, to show a different side of me, that I'm a family guy with a beautiful young wife and 2 teenage kids, something that I guess Norman Bates would never have.
Are you in the dining room area of your house?
Yeah.
You just left Barry in the living room.
Yes.
And again, is this... You're apparently a very tall man. Is that true? How tall are you?
I'm about I'm almost 6'3".
And you feel very comfortable in some of the old Spanish-style houses?
Yeah, they built them tall. When we had our house in New York, even though it wasn't cramped, the ceilings always did feel a little bit close to my head.
If you could sit down at the dining room table, I want to talk to you a little bit about acting and apparently directing. Is it true that you may direct Psycho 4?
The whole thing about directing is it's not exactly like an acting job where you can say, well, look, I'll make the best of this. I'll throw my entire soul and energy into this and do it the very, very best I can, which, of course, is the only way to accept any kind of a job, especially if it's got some creativeness to it. But if you're going to direct a movie, it has to be something that you can't not do. I remember when I first read the script of Psycho 3, I put the last page down and I said, I have to direct this. This is necessary. And I think I've directed another film, actually, since then, and I felt the same way about that. And you have an obligation to the material. You have an obligation to the actors you're going to be working with. You have an obligation to the people who are supplying the X number of millions of dollars. You just have to be in love with it, passionately in love with it. You have to have a need to illustrate this material and to find a way to make it entertaining and meaningful. So if I read the script of Psycho 4 and I really like it and I really find things in it that I would like to dramatize and bring to a mass audience, a world audience, well, then I will put in my bid to direct it.
Do you feel you have an obligation to Alfred Hitchcock?
Oh, definitely. You know, there's not that many people left who are still kind of carrying the torch, the Psycho torch, as it were. And there's a great deal of kind of business-like the commercialization of the topic, which is very, very easy. There's easy dollars there for the studios and for people who want to do games and videos and one thing and another. You have to be very, very careful that you remember the respect and dignity that the original had, and that hopefully the sequels have had so far. And that you keep a level head and you say, look, is this worth it? Is this a story that needs to be told?
Do you feel that if you do Psycho again, that it has to be reasonable? Someone said the word reasonable to you. What did that mean?
Well, that was a criticism, actually. I thought it was the shortest criticisms are always the best because they're the easiest to take, you know, and the easiest to remember. And a good friend of mine found that the first sequel of Psycho was too reasonable, and I thought that was an excellent observation. It wasn't crazy enough. It wasn't psycho enough. And the first Psycho it's an unreasonable story, and obviously, if you're going to, incidentally, when you said do Psycho again, well, that's something we wouldn't want to do. We wouldn't want to walk in the same footsteps if possible. The trouble with some remakes, and actually I think it was one of the problems with this second remake, that's Psycho 3, it was too much like. It was almost like the first one. If we find a way to do a fourth Psycho film, we will try to find a way not to repeat ourselves.
There are so many horror films out there now. There's Friday the 13th, probably the 13th Friday the 13th.
Yeah, exactly.
How does Psycho, or New Hope, Psycho distinguishes itself among the realm of horror films?
It'll distinguish itself, hopefully, in that the violence and the antisocial behavior in it is associated with the story, and that it's not just put there for movie reasons, for distributor reasons, for keeping them awake reasons. There's so much violence in films today goes unnoticed by the audience. They take a passive view of it, and the danger of that is when they then see violence on television, on the news, they can also have a passive reaction towards it. And I think that filmmakers who are going to deal with violence and with antisocial behavior have an obligation to have it be startling and having it be a part of the story, having it be shocking enough so that when we see the real thing, we're also shocked.
Psycho for Tony Perkins reasons. And Tony, thank you so much for joining us this morning and letting us into your house. And please thank Barry as well.
I will, thanks.
And we'll be back.
On CBS This Morning, here's a look at your weather.
The forecast for Des Moines and central Iowa, mostly sunny and cool today, a high 45 to 50. Tonight, a chance of sprinkles or snow flurries, a low in the low 30s. Tomorrow, a 30% chance of rain, a high near 50. Currently in Des Moines, we have clear skies and 26 degrees.
I want to remind you when you go to bed Saturday night that daylight savings time ends. Spring forward, fall back.
Absolutely.
So turn it back Saturday night. Monday on CBS This Morning, we're going to begin a look at television, past, present, and future. It's going to be interesting. Be with us.
Our immediate future in television has Shirley MacLaine talking with us on Monday, and tonight the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. You know, the fashion designers unveiled their spring lines in Paris, and we want to leave you this morning with some of their creations.
Have a great weekend.
See you on Halloween.
Bye-bye.